Hello everyone and welcome to the Week 10 ONIT Recap Show. This week we had a couple of massive upsets, some top 25 teams that won, and 5 ONIT versus ONIT matchups. We're going to get into all of that in a few minutes, but before we do so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any of our future videos, and stick around to the end of today's show to find out how you can be included in our upcoming content. With that all being said, why don't we find out what's in today's box?
What's in the box?
Our Week 10 ONIT Recap box features our locally sourced but nationally relevant headlines from all of our ONIT teams, including those 2 huge upsets we had on Saturday. We'll then move on to making the grade and tell you what players had the best performances over the weekend, and we'll finish it off by taking a peek ahead at Week 11 to see what matchups we have on tap. Can't wait. Let's begin by taking a look at our first game of the day. We begin by taking a look at Arizona State versus Iowa State, a 24-19 victory for the Sun Devils to improve to 6-3 and 4-2 in the Big 12, while Iowa State has been in a bit of a tailspin here. 4 straight losses now for the Cyclones. Rocco Beck not able to pass the ball efficiently in this game for whatever reason. Just 18 of 36 for 186 yards. That's the lowest number that he's had in a game since that Week 2 contest against Iowa. It's just offensively is not clicking right now for the Cyclones. Meanwhile, for Arizona State, quarterback rushing record set by Jeff Sims, interestingly enough. 228 yards on the ground for Jeff Sims, which was crazy. He had 29 carries as a quarterback. You don't normally see that. But Rayleigh Brown, 16 carries for 64 yards. Tremone Mateer, 6 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown for the Sun Devils as they were able to put away Iowa State thanks to a big 4th down stop in the 4th quarter. Neither of these teams actually scored in the 4th quarter at all. They were both shut out. It was a very interesting game in terms of how the scoring went. Both teams a field goal in the first. Then both teams scored touchdowns in the second. And then Arizona State got that separating touchdown in the 3rd quarter, and Iowa State only was able to get a field goal, which is how this one ended up 24-19. For Arizona State, they're going to go into a bye on Week 11, while Iowa State will get ready to face TCU. Let's talk a little Oklahoma State at Kansas here. The Cowboys coming in looking for their first Big 12 win. They were not able to get that as Kansas beat them 38-21. 4 second-half touchdown drives led by Jalen Daniels for the Jayhawks was the difference in this game. As in the first half, it was a 10-7 contest, close ball game. Oklahoma State had the ball for a majority of the time in that first half, as Kansas only had 2 offensive drives. But then things quickly shifted in that second half. Kansas able to light up the scoreboard behind Jalen Daniels. Zane Flores played a really good game for Oklahoma State, honestly. 22 of 28 passing, 235 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But not enough offense there for the Pokes to overcome Kansas. It's now the 8th straight loss for Oklahoma State. Their 15th straight conference loss in the Big 12. They're trying to find some type of way to turn it around in Stillwater. And Zane Flores, at least, again, looked really good in this game, was able to move the ball, completed a high number of passes, decent amount of yards, threw 2 touchdowns. So at least that looks on the up for the Cowboys. And for Kansas, Jalen Daniels, when he is on his script, when he is playing in rhythm, functioning well, he is a really dominant quarterback, and you saw that here, leading those 4 touchdown drives in the second half. Kansas scored on both of their possessions in the first half. So when Jalen Daniels can lock in and can be in rhythm, he is really one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12, and that was on full display in this game. And then they just ran it down the gut in the 4th quarter. Daniels didn't have to do much of anything in that sequence because the Cowboys could not stop Kansas on the ground, helped them salt away this 38-21 victory as Kansas State improves to 5-4 and 3-3 in the Big 12. Oklahoma State will get Kansas State in an ONIT versus ONIT matchup coming up after a bye week, and then Kansas is going to play Arizona next Saturday. Time to talk about some of our ranked ONIT teams, beginning with number 23, USC at Nebraska. Another ONIT versus ONIT matchup here. And look, I'll full hand up admit it right here. If you watched Thursday's video, if you watched the clip that we posted on social media, I said Jade Maihava was on slab watch because he could light it up in Lincoln. If you watched this game, you know that that did not happen. He was 9 of 23 for just 135 yards. On the road against a program that is, again, full of tradition. They had their blackout game, and Maihava was not able to get it done through the air. But USC still won this game, 21-17. The Trojans came back in the fourth quarter. King Miller, 129 yards, and the go-ahead touchdown on the ground. Again, in a game where Maihava really couldn't get the ball out, it was the ground attack for USC. 202 total yards on the ground. They had 10 runs of at least 10 yards to the number 23 USC Trojans. And for Nebraska, it's their 29th straight loss against ranked opponents. USC was not ranked coming into last week, and they were on a bye last week. And then with teams losing, USC off, got shoveled into the top 25. And some are saying that is to beat Nebraska. Is there a truth to that statement? I don't know. You can ask the pollsters because I don't have an AP vote. But it is an interesting coincidence that USC was in the rankings to go into this game against Nebraska. The 23 Trojans do get it done, 21-17. They're 6-2, 4-1 in the Big Ten. For Nebraska, 6-3, 3-3 in the Big Ten. Emmett Johnson continues to be an absolute game changer. 165 yards and a touchdown on 29 carries. He is the guy that Nebraska can lean on offensively, but there just wasn't enough juice in the tank in that second half for the Cornhuskers. Only 3 points as USC outscored them 15-3 in the second half to take this game away. USC will be at home against Northwestern. They have a Friday night game this week, so be on the lookout for that. And then Nebraska will be going to UCLA. So both of these teams will be in the same city once again this coming weekend. But USC should be moving up in the polls as Nebraska suffers their third loss of the season. Let's talk Penn State at number 1, Ohio State, as the Buckeyes remain undefeated at 8-0, 5-0 in the Big Ten, while Penn State has lost their 5th straight game here after the 38-14 Buckeye victory. This was a close contest going into the half. A fumble recovery for the Nittany Lions set up their second touchdown of the second quarter as Katron Allen and Nick Singleton both scored on the ground in the second quarter for the Nittany Lions. But the rest of the offense did not happen for Penn State in this game. And for Ohio State, man, what a game. The receiving on another level. Carnell Tate, 5 catches, 124 yards, and a touchdown. Jeremiah Smith, 6 catches, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 316 total yards through the air for the Ohio State pass catchers in this game, and that was really the difference. Penn State was only able to throw for 145 yards, while Ohio State lit it up through the air against the Nittany Lions. That's kind of been the MO for Ohio State these last couple of games, as their quarterback Julian Sayin has definitely played himself into Heisman talk. He has been absolutely phenomenal. And on Thursday's show, I talked about how Penn State was going into a rough stretch. Things looked good for them in the first half. The third quarter was kind of a backbreaker when Ohio State came out and scored 14 straight points against them. So now the Nittany Lions, who have lost 5 straight games, 0-5 in the Big Ten, now they get to host number 2 Indiana. That's going to be a rough one for Penn State. This was the game where they had everything to play for, nothing to lose, and again, they came out really hot, but kind of fizzled off. Can they put it together for a full 4 quarters next Saturday against Indiana? That's definitely the question. And then Ohio State will head to Purdue. So they look to remain undefeated. November's the longest month in college football, especially when you're an undefeated team. So for Ohio State, just trying to stay the course. They'll go to Purdue next week, try to avoid the upset, and look to see if they can become 9-0. Thanks to this victory over Penn State, 38-14. We've gotten pretty good at these game of the weeks here. The last couple that we have picked have been absolutely phenomenal. And this one was no different. Oklahoma going to Neyland Stadium under the lights against Tennessee, and a 33-27 victory maybe keeps Oklahoma's slim playoff hopes alive as they go to 7-2 and 3-2 in the SEC. And for Tennessee, those playoff hopes may have been dashed as they are now 6-3 and 3-3 in SEC play. John Mateer with the game-winning touchdown for the Sooners. He did it on the ground, threw for 159 yards, had 80 rushing yards, including that final touchdown scamper on the ground to win the game for Oklahoma. It was once again a game where that thumb is clearly bothering him, but he goes out there, he's a gamer, he competes, and he's doing everything he can to try to will Oklahoma to these victories. The defense stepped up in a big way. 3 turnovers that they were able to force. An R. Mason Thomas 71-yard touchdown return set the tone for Oklahoma in the first quarter to get them on the board. And then they also managed to pick off Joey Aguilar twice, and that led to 2 field goals for the Sooners, which again made a pretty big difference in this game in a 6-point swing. Those 2 interceptions leading to 6 points. That's the ball game right there. Aguilar was under pressure all night long, sacked 4 times, hit, hurried, didn't have a ton of time to throw, which played a part certainly in the 2 interceptions. And even with all of that, he still threw for 393 yards and 2 touchdowns, both to Brandon Staley, who had 5 catches for 75 yards in the pair of scores. Aguilar is a serious look when it comes to the NFL draft here. He has become one of the best passers in the NCAA. The way he stands in the pocket and he can just sling the football. This guy has serious NFL talent, in my opinion. I would not be surprised if we see him climb up draft boards here as time goes on, but he wasn't good enough with the 2 interceptions in this game. That was really a huge difference in the contest. And for Oklahoma, they didn't get their first third down conversion until there were less than 3 minutes left in the first half. So when you look at this game, it was really a tale of 2 halves for Oklahoma. They were struggling on third down, struggling to move the football, and then come out and light up the scoreboard for 17 points in the second half. You got to give a lot of credit to the defense, and again, you got to give a lot of credit to Mateer because he's clearly not 100%, but he's still finding a way to win games for the Sooners, and they've kept their playoff hopes alive in our game of the week. Both of these teams are going to go into a bye next week. In fact, we have 10 ONIT teams on bye next week, but we'll get into that later when we talk about the Week 11 recap. For now, let's take a look at the rest of our ONIT teams who did not play in an ONIT versus ONIT matchup. Looking at our ONIT teams in the top 25 here, how about the Longhorns with an upset over Vanderbilt, 34-31 at home in Austin. Looked like their season was completely on the ropes in the fourth quarter against Mississippi State. And now you have potentially a season-defining win. This is going to go down as one of Texas's best wins of the season. They're 7-2 on the year. They're only 4-1 in the SEC. One of their losses was to number 1 Ohio State. This is a Texas team that many people were asking, how are they still in the top 25? Well, they might be a college football playoff team if things keep going this way. Arch turned it around. The defense was on fire. Anthony Hill Jr. balling out like he usually does. Quintravion Wisner, 18 carries, 75 yards, and a touchdown. This might be the time to take a look at Texas seriously. They blitzed Vanderbilt in the first quarter, jumped out to a 17-0 lead, outscored them 10-0 in the third quarter. And then finally just had enough cushion in the fourth that they were able to give up 3 touchdowns and still win this game by 3. The same could not be said for Michigan. Their win was a little less comfortable. Wolverines taking on Purdue, 21-16 was the final. It was the ground game that got it done for the Wolverines because, boy, were they in for a little bit of a scare. It was a close one there, but Michigan able to get it done against a 2-7 Boilermakers squad. Underwood, not his best game, just 13 of 22, an interception, no touchdowns. But Jordan Marshall, 25 carries, 185 yards, 3 touchdowns, along of 54, as he averaged 7.4 yards every time he touched the rock. Huge part of why the Wolverines, in fact, the reason they won the game. He scored all 3 of their touchdowns for Michigan, so they'll be moving up in the top 25 as well. Looking outside the top 25 here, let's talk about Arkansas. They continue to find ways to blow games. That's the best way to say it. 38-35, Mississippi State takes down Arkansas. Absolute fourth quarter meltdown, which has been the theme for Arkansas this season. We saw it last week against Auburn. We see it again against Mississippi State. Boise State, down to their second string quarterback. Offense was not there for the Broncos in a 30-7 loss for Fresno State. College football playoffs effectively out the window for Boise State. They were already slim. Now they're non-existent. Florida. This was a great game for Florida against number 5 Georgia. They just unfortunately couldn't get over the line. They held the Bulldogs down for a while, but for Florida, just couldn't find that touchdown that they needed in the fourth quarter to win the game. DJ Lagway played very well for the Gators. Jaden Baugh also had a nice game on the ground. And Eugene Wilson, the third, 9 catches, 121 yards, and a touchdown for the Gators. But it was a end of the game touchdown for Georgia late in that fourth quarter. Florida did get the ball back, but they couldn't get fourth down conversion. There was controversy around whether it was a catch, whether it was not a catch. But as it is, Florida falls to 3-5, 2-3 in the SEC. Florida State came out with a commanding win over Wake Forest, 42-7. Seminoles able to move the ball up and down the field at will. Deuce Robinson, huge game for them. 5 catches, 148 yards, and a touchdown. As Castellanos only had to throw the ball 16 times, slung it for 271 yards on 12 completions and a touchdown. He looked very good as Florida State rolled in that game. Kansas State had Texas Tech on the ropes. We had a couple of ONIT upsets this week, talking about Texas and a team that we're going to get to later. Kansas State looked like they could have been the third team to do that for us this week, but as it was, in the fourth quarter, just couldn't keep it together against a really good Texas Tech team. They were outscored in the second half by a pretty drastic margin here. 31-13 was the scoring difference in the third and fourth quarters after Kansas State kept it 7-12 going into halftime. But interceptions and fumbles really doomed the Wildcats in their 43-20 loss. South Carolina, another team that kept it close against a ranked opponent. This game was 7-17 going into the half. South Carolina scored in the third quarter early on to make it 17-14, but then Ole Miss pulled away in the fourth quarter. You're kind of getting some similar stories here. The fourth quarter was where some of these ranked teams were able to escape upsets against some of our ONIT squads. But South Carolina played a very solid game. They almost had took down Alabama a week ago. You thought maybe against Ole Miss they could continue some of those good things. But once again, the offense for South Carolina, Sellers, 16 of 30 through the air, 180 yards and a touchdown. It's just not clicking offensively for the Gamecocks for whatever reason. And lastly, our team that did manage to pull off a huge upset. How about the West Virginia Mountaineers, 45-35 over the Houston Cougars. Great defensive effort in this game from the Mountaineers. Jordan Scruggs had an 80-yard interception return. Derek Carter also had a interception, and then they recovered 2 fumbles in a 10-point victory. The most impressive part about this game, though, was the way that West Virginia was able to move the ball all day long. They racked up 246 yards on the ground and scored 4 rushing touchdowns. Hubbard, Fox, and Bowers all getting into the end zone for the Mountaineers as they managed to upset number 22 Houston and get their first Big 12 win on the season. With that all being said, it's time to see who had the best performances of Week 10 as we look at who made the grade. It is Sunday, which means it's time for Making the Grade, where we let you know what players had the best performance over the weekend from our ONIT athletes. We got to begin on the defensive side of the ball because we love NIL for all here at ONIT. So, our first near mint 8, Fred Perry for the West Virginia Mountaineers. 13 tackles, with 9 of them being solo. Also had himself a sack, and 2 of those tackles were for a loss in the West Virginia 45-35 win at number 22 Houston. Our next near mint 8, the wide receiver from Florida State, Deuce Robinson, with 5 catches, 148 yards, and a touchdown. He averaged 29.6 yards per catch, and he was responsible for more than 50% of Florida State's receiving yardage in the 42-7 win over Wake Forest. So he gets himself a near mint 8. Back to the defensive side of the ball as we look at our mint 9s. It's Mason Thomas and his game-deciding touchdown from Oklahoma in a 33-27 victory. His fumble 6 not only was the longest for the Oklahoma Sooners, but it was a 6-point game, and that defensive touchdown made a massive difference. He also had a sack and a tackle for loss in the contest to go along with that fumble 6 for Oklahoma in their big win in Knoxville. Our other mint 9, it's Jeremiah Smith, but really we're going to give it to both Smith and Carnell Tate. The two of them lit up the Penn State secondary in a 38-14 win for Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith, 6 catches, 123 yards. He scored 2 touchdowns, while Tate had 5 catches for 124 yards and a touchdown. And both of them had a long reception of 57 yards. They were basically inseparable in this game. 1 catch, 1 yard, 1 touchdown between the two of them. So they are both going to be deserving of a mint 9, but there can only be 110 each and every week. Let us know down below who you think it should be, and tell me, did we leave some players off the list that should have been on it? But our 10 is Jordan Marshall of Michigan. The Wolverines won 21-16 in a struggle against Purdue. He was the deciding factor. 25 carries, 185 yards, averaged 7.4 yards per tote, and he had 3 touchdowns, scored all of them for Michigan in the 21-16 win. That is why he gets our Gem Mint 10 as the best performance of the weekend. If we got it right, let us know. If we got it wrong, tell us who should have been on there instead down in the comments. But we appreciate you tuning in, and let's take a look at our Week 11 look ahead. Here's how Week 11 is shaping up for us here at ONIT. Got some great games on the slate, highlighted by LSU at Alabama and Texas A&M at Missouri. We have 10 ONIT teams on bye during Week 11, so that is something to look out for. But we have a lot of good games to watch here. Let me know down in the comments below what game you are most interested in seeing this week. I'm going to go out on a limb and say LSU at Alabama will probably end up being the game of the week. But the game that I'm most looking forward to actually watching here is probably going to be Washington at Wisconsin. The Huskies are a very interesting team to me. I think that they deserve to be in the top 25, and I wonder if a win at Wisconsin, although they don't have the best record, will be enough to finally convince the committee that Washington should be into the top 25. We'll find out coming up. Let us know down below what games you're interested in seeing, and also make sure that you submit your hits to the link down below. You can be a part of our future videos. We want to show off your best cards, your best pulls. So if you hit a big card out of a platinum box, out of a single pack, or on our TikTok or whatnot streams, you can drop them in the link down below. We will show them off as we want to hear from you, the community, about your favorite ONIT pulls. That's all the time we have on the Week 10 recap show, but we're going to be back on Thursday for the Week 11 preview. Can't wait to see all of you then. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Please subscribe down below as it does help us out, and then you won't miss any of our future content. But we will see you on Thursday, and take a look for that AP poll reaction coming out on Monday as well. So long, everyone, and have a wonderful day.